Good evening and welcome to the May 26, 2021 work session of the Penfield Town Board. I'll officially call this meeting to order. We'll let the minutes reflect that the full board is with us this evening. In addition to the full board, we have Town Engineer and Planning Director, Mr. Mark Valentine. We are honored to have Sarah Waterman from the Engineering Department with us this evening, and Director of Public Works, Eric Tate, and of course, our ace Deputy Town Clerk, Sue Scheit, who captures the minutes for us. So I'll read the official notice. Due to COVID-19 virus and the closing of town operations, consistent with the Governor's executive orders, the May 26, 2021 Town Board work session meeting will be held remotely via Zoom. This meeting will also be video recorded and broadcast live via the town's website at penfield.org, on the town's government access cable channel 1303, and on streaming media device that includes Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Please search Penfield TV in your device's app store. This is, in fact, a free app. This meeting will later be transcribed. Questions regarding video coverage, please contact Penfield TV at 340-8661. That's 340-8661. With that, our first order of business are the minutes, and we do have the minutes from the Wednesday, May 2nd, 2021 work session, and would entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
I'll move them, Mr. Supervisor.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Draw, second by Councilperson Ockenden. I'll ask, is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote of approval, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, thank you very much. Monthly reports are all in, so the next time we discuss those will be at our next work session meeting, the first work session in June. So thank you to all our department heads for getting those materials into the board for updates. We have no public hearings this evening, and we do not have any guests this evening. We do have a number of action items, and we'll start in with our first action item. This is CCA. Before I turn the reins over to Mark Valentine and Sarah Waterman, I want to just make a couple of comments. As the leader of the EEAC, our Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee, the team put together, and we started back in the end of July, early August timeframe of 2020, and the team and actually our friend Sarah Waterman was our focal point from staff, who did a great job of taking all of the collective information from the EEAC. We prepared an RFP. We reviewed that a number of different committee meetings. We did, in fact, send that out. We did receive 2 different companies of interest, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. And the EEAC came back together and prepared, with the assistance of Sarah, prepared our administrator review scoring card, if you will. And I know that we've had an opportunity, the board has had an opportunity to look at several different versions of this. And we've asked a number of questions back to one and or both of the vendors that provided us information. So I've just summarized about 10 months or thereabouts of work. And at this time, I would like to recognize Mark and Sarah for some opening comments before we get into some broader conversations.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I say my name is next to this one, but I'll turn it over to Sarah for this. She's kind of, she has been the lead on this throughout with the EEAC and gathering the information together, so she can run through a little bit of the timeline that Supervisor captured much of it, as well as some of the highlights of the matrix that the board has before it.
So as the supervisor said, we have been working on this back into 2020, the town board did approve a resolution for a local law that allowed the town to select an administrator. In October of 2020, we put the RFP out and received 2 bids. Those were from Jewel as well as Good Energy. Those are both administrators for CCA programs. And we've been reviewing that information and requesting more since. The EEAC has put to the town board a matrix summarizing information for both groups so that a decision can be made to move forward with one of the groups or not move forward with either. At this time, we're looking for feedback on what you would like. There is an option, if moving forward, to put out another RFP that would be done by whichever chosen administrator, and there would be no cost to the town at this time. That's something that they would do, of basically trying to get a bid so that they can move forward with the CCA program. And once that RFP is put out, different ESCOs or other groups would bid, essentially, and figure out if savings can come from going anything from 50% renewable to 100% renewable energy for the town. This would affect all residents that are not already part of an ESCO and do not have solar at this time. It would also affect small businesses.
Affect small businesses in a positive way that they may be able to participate.
Yes.
Right.
It is an opt-out program only for community choice aggregation. Basically, that means that residents would be put into the program and would be given information so they could choose to opt out. So you're automatically enrolled and then can opt out. There's no negatives for you yourself to opt out. There's no penalties, no cost, anything like that to residents in that regard.
And Sarah, I think all of us here on the board are aware that the work that one of these providers, they would be going out and educating the community about the program. So it could be a series of what I'll call general meetings that would be held at maybe this location or others. It could be office hours that are held at different locations. It could be mailings or a combination of all of those together, with the idea of making sure that the residents and small businesses that are able to participate are fully aware of what the program is, what it means, and then what are some of their requirements if they so choose not to participate. The fact that they do, in fact, have to opt out if they're so inclined to do that. That's an initiative by them, not either by the town or the administrator.
So it would be, that's all correct, except it would be by the administrator doing all of that work.
Right, thank you for that.
And that would also include a website that we would link to our website specifically for a potential CCA program, so that residents could go on there and also opt out online rather than by mailing.
Okay, great, great. All right, board questions or comments for this program?
So these administrators, we're not paying them. We may choose one of the administrators, but they're going to go out there on their own, right? And
correct.
not being paid by us to get more information, expertise, and meet with the public to further educate them as well.
That's correct. The way that the administrators make money is once a CCA program is established. That does not happen until another RFP happens, and then the town signs a contract with the administrator and whichever ESCO or other group is part of that, wins that bid essentially. Then the administrator receives money by adding a very small fee on top of the energy. So it would be a fee per kilowatt hour. That's part of the numbers that were provided by both administrators. As we've discussed previously, the one administrator does have a higher fee than the other. It is a very relatively small difference, but one is higher than the other. And that is tacked on to the fee for the energy. And it's included in the cost that would come back from the RFP with those bids.
And Sarah, if you will, who would prepare that RFP to go out to the market, if you will?
The administrator would do that RFP, and the town would be able to look at it and have approval of it before it goes out.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other board, other questions, other comments that you may have?
Sarah, the CDG stands for,
Community Distributed Generation.
okay,
Essentially, CDG is relatively equivalent to community solar.
okay, okay.
And so that's a good point, Mr. Moore. Sarah, if you would, could you comment on community solar in general, and where our two administrators might be with that?
Sure. Community solar, as it is today, is something that anybody can choose to be a part of. Whether you're here in New York or out in California, it's all over the country. And it's basically, there's a solar field similar to the array on the town land, and different people can choose to own a section of it. So you would pay a fee, and then that would be your green energy. You would end up spending less on RG&E because you have that portion of the solar field. You would still get a bill at a separate time from your ownership, basically your monthly rent, essentially, and you get to be more green, essentially. CDG takes that a step further. There's options for CDG opt-in and CDG opt-out programs. This is generally run by an administrator. Both administrators offer CDG opt-in. Jewel offers CDG opt-out. Again, that's the premise of everybody is enrolled and you can opt out, or instead of everybody being enrolled, you can choose to opt in. In the CDG program, you would still pay a fee for being part of it, but you would see there's a guaranteed 10% savings on your bill. CDG does not have to be part of CCA, but it cannot exist without CCA. There are two differences between the administrators other than just opt-in and opt-out. Jewel offers CDG, but there's a credit check with it. Good Energy offers CDG without a credit check. The difference being, if you yourself were to try and join a community solar program right now, you would have to get a credit check.
Sarah, can you just explain that a little bit?
Sure.
And why, and what's the threshold? Is there a, if you have good credit versus, just trying to understand where that.
Sure. So
plays in
I'm truly not as versed as the numbers of what your credit score needs to be. But the idea being to not have to do a credit check, it would allow people with worse credit or no credit to still join a CDG program, a community solar program, essentially. If, say, I was an 18-year-old just entering the world, I probably don't have very good credit.
Right.
That's normally how it happens.
Right.
I would likely not be able to get community solar because I would have such bad credit. That's the thought process.
And so if you could go back to each of the companies that you evaluated.
Sure.
And how that applies to them.
So for Jewel, if they run a credit check on you and your credit is not at an acceptable point, you would not be able to join that program. For Good Energy, because there is no credit check, that's not a concern.
All right, I'm just trying to understand that. So the person who might need the help the most could struggle the most to get it.
That's likely.
Perhaps if you say that, their credit rating somehow correlates to their
If you're a
overall.
senior citizen like yourself, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yes, right. So, yeah, that's interesting, though. So, okay, so they may not have that same benefit, perhaps.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's tied to the community solar aspect
Right.
of that.
That does not affect CCA at all.
Right.
Okay. Sarah, did either of the providers take exceptions to what you put out in the RFP? Any notable exceptions without an alternative?
Both providers provided everything that we requested in the original RFP.
Okay.
There were documents that we requested at a later date to further our education as well as benefit our decision-making. One of them was not as accessible as the other.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, Town Attorney Mr. Horowitz did forward a letter to them for some requested information.
That's correct.
Sarah, hi. Both providers that have submitted proposals to us, can you just tell us a little bit about one versus how long they've been around?
Sure.
And what kind of companies they are as far as response for residents, community?
Also experience. I think
Experience,
experience is important here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll start with Jewel.
Mhm.
Jewel is, Jewel applied as a dual company, so both Jewel and Rocktricity. They would be working together and essentially splitting the fee that they would receive. Rocktricity is a relatively new company. They've only been around for 4 or 5 years. They are local to Rochester, as you can tell in the name, and they have 4 employees. They work 9 to 5 jobs, Monday through Friday. Jewel has been around since 2010, and they have about 20 employees that would be working on CCA. They are not local to Rochester, but they are local to New York State. They have 5 CCA programs total, and that includes 20 communities. CCA programs can have multiple communities involved in them, and that's why those numbers differ, the 5 to 20. 11 of those communities are operating as 100% renewable energy. CCAs can choose to be 100% renewable or a subset below that. A lot of communities will choose that based on what the savings are. Good Energy has been around since 2000. They have over 200 communities, 390,000 of those households are 100% renewable. We don't have a number of communities specifically that are 100% renewable. They operate in 8 states, and they operate CCA programs in 8 states. They, as a company, operate in 20 states. They also operate outside of the U.S. as well. Jewel also operates outside the U.S. There was one more thing. Oh, and Good Energy both has an office in Rochester as well as in New York State.
Thank you, yeah, great.
Other questions, Board? Your driver was just a little bit slow, right, Sarah?
I got there.
Yeah, we work with them, and
You can't get good help these days.
Oh, maybe the matrix is up, yes.
Sarah, in some of my research, in some of the materials, is it an accurate statement that Good Energy is endorsed by the New York Conference of Mayors and Association of Towns?
That is a correct statement, and
Okay.
because of that endorsement, they have the backing of New York Municipal Energy Program. By having that backing, they actually have access to an energy pool that Jewel does not have. And that could show potential savings.
Okay. And, I guess kind of at a 30,000-foot level, when we look at CCA and the benefits of CCA, I think ultimately, and correct me if I'm wrong, but ultimately the goal is to provide a level of clean energy, green energy to Penfield residents at a reduced cost from what they're currently, or what we're currently paying today. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
That's accurate. The way that the savings is looked at is there's what's called a look-back period. That period can be 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, whatever is chosen. And you're looking back at what the cost of energy was averaged in that time frame.
Right.
So when you are being given a cost for the next year, 2 years, however long the potential contract is, you are looking at the savings compared to that look-back cost. There will likely be fluctuations throughout the contract timeframe where you may be paying this month a little higher than you paid last year, but then the expectation is that other months there will be more of a savings. A lot of the programs that we've looked at, there's a savings between $10 and $100. It's not always a huge savings, but over time it adds up.
Yeah. And and I'm not leading you in this question, but when you talk about look back, would a reasonable look back be 12 months, 6 months, 2 years? What do you think a reasonable look back would? Because you got to compare it to something.
When I give you the 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, those are the standard.
Right.
Generally, when you're looking at savings from an analytical point of view, you would want the average of those. So 12
Right.
months would be appropriate.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier in your comments that it is an opt-out. Both of them are opt-out. So should we move forward at some point, the residents of Penfield would be included in this program, and if they decided that they didn't want to be included in this program, they could simply opt out. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
To not be in the program, it would be a resident's responsibility to take action.
Okay. But I would also offer that I would think that a part of the education of what's going on would be the ability for someone to opt out at a pretty reasonable manner of doing so. It shouldn't be a complicated process to do that.
That's completely true. So with
Yeah.
the education aspect of the program, the education, as the supervisor said, ranges from mailings to online social media to
Right.
a website to sometimes paper articles or news articles. It's every aspect of education they truly can reasonably make. And then within that, there is our mailings to every resident so that they have the paperwork, and generally it's a postcard that's already stamped to send back to do an opt-out. So it's being provided to them. They essentially have to fill out a little bit of paperwork and send that back, put it back in the mail. The other way, again, is to do online, and that's a relatively simple form online. It's meant to be as easy as possible.
It's also my understanding that, Penfield's not alone in pursuing this effort. Obviously, these are initiatives in states across the country, but here locally in Monroe County, I believe the town of Pittsford is moving down this road. I believe the village of Pittsford is also, the town of Arundecoit, the town of Brighton, and I believe the city of Rochester.
That is all correct. And I believe, in addition, the village of Pittsford.
Okay, yep. Okay.
So I think it's important to note that as we look at this and we move forward, the benefit of having more people in than not, you have more power that you're looking to draw from. You have the opportunity to get better pricing. So if you've got 10,000 households in, you're going to get a better deal than if you have 8,500 households in, type of thing. So there will be a certain number of residents, as we look to move forward, there'll be a certain number of residents that elect to opt out just because that's what they want to do. They want to have full control. The thing that I think we want to make sure happens is that working with either one of these administrators is that, trying to get the best pricing for our residents. Because if you're telling me that you're going to make me get in here, you're going to have to force me to get out, and oh, by the way, it's going to cost me more, type of thing, then I think, as community leaders, we're looking to try to provide savings to our residents. We're trying to do that to make it as green as it can possibly be, and to manage that over time, not to provide higher costs, because I would say that a good share of our residents are would be asking questions, why are we paying more through this effort versus less? And again, Sarah had mentioned that $10 to $100. Again, timing into the market and all of that is an important aspect of that as well. I would guess that if you're jumping in the middle of January, your pricing is going to be a little bit different than if you're jumping in the middle of July, for instance.
And that's part of the benefit of doing a 12 or 24-month look back.
Right.
But something also to consider is that residents can choose to opt out throughout the program. So
point.
if the town board is to choose to move forward and eventually gets to the point of having a CCA program, then the contract the town signs doesn't disallow a resident to opt out in January or March or August. Anytime in that program, each individual resident can choose to opt out. It's not that there's only a month to make a decision.
And I think those are good points. I mean, Mr. Supervisor, I think you've been very transparent in the conversation about, the benefits, and I think I can say with 100% accuracy, there's nobody on this town board that's looking to raise the cost of utilities on residents. We are residents too, and we're not looking at raising our utility bill. And ultimately, that look back, that 12-month look back that you were talking about, Sarah, gives us the comparison that I think that we need moving forward, so that we can see if this is indeed going to save money for residents, or whether it may be more expensive for residents. And if it is more expensive than residents, and I'm pretty sure every board member up here is going to cancel this program real fast, under those conditions. So I think that we're kind of on the same page as far as looking at the opportunities to provide some clean energy or some green energy at a reduced cost to Penfield residents. And we'll have the ability to analyze that and take a look at the data and see if it's going to move in that direction, or maybe it doesn't because of market scenarios in the United States, across the world, who knows, with commodities like the commodities that go into these type of decisions, and supply and demand. So I like the fact that there's the ability to stop if we need to stop, if things aren't going the way we think they should go, and quite frankly, any CCA that's being done has that ability too, whether it's Pittsford, whether it's Rondequoit, Brighton, or City of Rochester. It does give us that flexibility. But again, I just want to emphasize that the goal here is to, promote green energy. I think the town's been been very successful at our green energy initiatives with open space and LED lights and the solar array and the electronic charging stations and so forth. And this is just another effort on the town's part to, provide clean, green energy to Penfield residents, and hopefully it will be at a lower cost. And if it's not at a lower cost, then we have the ability to stop the program. And of course, the residents have the ability at any point in time to get out of the program if they're not happy with it.
That's
So.
correct. And an item that Good Energy brought up both in their proposal as well as an educational meeting is that if after the first RFP goes out through them and they get bids back and there isn't a savings, they can go back and do it again at a different time
Right.
period. And if the town wants them to, they can continue to check those prices. And if right now there's not a savings, but a year from now there is, they would let us know.
Yeah, and I think that's where that check and balance is that's important in this. And I know, Mr. Supervisor, you've talked about it before, and I've talked about it, and other town board members have in meetings in the past, but also, talking to neighbors that we know and people interested in this issue, that there is that ability to stop the program if we think that it's going to be an additional cost to residents.
All right, other questions for Sarah? I would include Mark, but seeing how she's answered all the questions, we'll just let him drive the screen. So further questions for Sarah?
So Sarah, just for any resident listening, so if they opt out at any given point, then they go shop their own ESCO, right? Or they,
RG&E.
that's what they do, right? They can have that chance to.
Yes, if you're a resident and you choose to opt out, you can go to an ESCO, you can simply go back to RG&E. You can also choose to put solar on your house or choose to join a community solar program. Having solar on your house, being a member of an ESCO, and being a part of a solar program, it actually it makes you ineligible for being part of an opt-out program. So those people will not automatically be included, and that's part of why that's another option that residents can take.
And I think that's a good clarification, is that if you already had chosen an ESCO or to be in wind or solar, it's not going to automatically pull you out of that program to put you into CCA. You've already made a choice. It does not pull you out and put you into CCA. It's that if you reside with RG&E today and that's your baseline, you still get your power from RG&E, the same lines are still there, but you would automatically be put into the CCA program. But if you'd already made a choice, you're in your ESCO, you want to stay in your ESCO, this won't pull you out of that.
And
So-
that's why in a lot of the documentation, it says eligible residents, because those people in other programs are not eligible.
Okay.
So if I were a resident and I had some number of solar panels on my garage, on my house, in a field behind my home, I would not be eligible for the CCA program.
That's correct.
So if I take a look at, the house that we have here on the corner of Jackson and Atlantic Avenue that have a solar array that covers, I think in their case, a pretty significant portion of their electric bill, they would not be candidates to be part of the CCA because they're already working on a, component of, green or alternative
Right.
energy. Okay. All right. Anything else for Sarah?
No, I'm good.
All right, next steps, board.
Looking for a motion?
Well, so, if you need any additional information or soak time, the matter could be tabled. If you're comfortable with, and the only caveat that I would say is that I might only encourage the board to consider doing that for a 2-week period, because I think we do owe both of these vendors a response back either way. We can elect to move forward with one of these, or we can elect to say that we don't want to participate at all in the process at this time. So I think those are our three options that we have on the table.
Mr. Supervisor, I know we've had this information for a while, and I know, Sarah, you've been very forthcoming. I've talked to her a number of times. I'm, myself, am comfortable if we wanted to move ahead tonight. Of both of the proposals, I do have I would like to, I don't know if the board feels this way, but the Good Energy group, I am very comfortable. I like the answers that we've gotten, the response. I mainly like the 24/7 response that they're going to be for the residents here in Penfield, and I think that's really important. I know both of them have a lot of them have the same, the opt-out, ability, but I do feel that the experience, and I know that's something that we've talked extensively about what other towns are doing, other municipalities. I just think that the Good Energy is a good fit, I think, for the residents here in Penfield. And again, I like the fact that like you said, if this doesn't work out, if we're not all saving money, or the residents that decide to opt in, we look at this. We haven't, gone so far that, we can't go back. I mean, I see both of them as well are on pretty much a two-year contract. So that still isn't forever, but we can even, before then, if all of a sudden I decide I didn't want to be a part of it, I can, no harm, no foul. And I'm willing to, I think we've seen that in the community, the need and the desire that we want something like this. So I would propose, if someone else, how the rest of the board feels about the Good Energy piece of it. I just think I like their.
Is that a motion?
I would like to move ahead, Mr. Supervisor, that we go with the Good Energy for the CCA administrator, for them to go forward with their plan.
Is there a second to the motion on the table?
I'll second that, Mr. Supervisor. I think Councilwoman Draw, I agree with her comments. We're very fortunate here in Penfield to have two applicants put in proposals. Both of them have, a lot of pros to them, but I think that Good Energy really stands out as the best of the two applicants. They clearly have the experience working, across the United States, as Sarah mentioned. I like the fact that with the CDG, opt-in or opt-out or opt-in capabilities with no credit check, I think that's a positive for residents down the road. I also like the fact that Good Energy has been endorsed by the New York State Conference of Mayors and the Association of Towns, which shows that they've been vetted by those organizations quite thoroughly, and for them to make that type of an endorsement, I think legitimizes Good Energy as a solid company to go with. And I think that this will be a continuation of the good track record this town has in energy conservation and open space initiatives that we've seen over the last couple years. And then going back with some of the questions that we asked Sarah, I'm more and more comfortable with the fact that residents can opt out of this at any point in time, and quite honestly, the town can opt out of this program at any point in time if we're not seeing the savings that that this CCA could provide. So I think it's a win-win for us and for residents. Ultimately, we're looking at reducing some costs for residents on their utility bills. I think everybody would enjoy that, while at the same time, pursuing town initiatives to promote good stewardship of the environment with clean, green energy. So I second this motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table and second. Further discussion, questions, or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote of approval, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, thank you. And I'd just like to pause for a minute before we move on to the rest of our action items to once again publicly thank Sarah. Sarah has done an outstanding job pulling everything together, asking for additional materials, working very closely with both Jewel and Rocktricity and Good Energy, meeting with and supporting the EEAC, and obviously providing input and feedback to the town throughout this process as we've asked questions to continue to better understand on our end what goes into all of this. So, Sarah, thank you again for being our shepherd through this by being the person that read cover to cover and then back again, all of that, those volumes of material, and ferreting out all the information from both Good Energy, Jewel, Rocktricity. I'd also like to recognize and thank both of those companies. They have been both very good partners with the town, and I won't speak for you, Sarah, but in speaking with you, I know that you've had a tremendous amount of contact with both of them, and they have answered the questions that we have asked and tried to be true partners in the sense of the RFP process. So I want to thank them as well. All right, we will move on to our next action item. This is the Rothfuss Park Field expansion bids, and I'll recognize Mr. Valentine. And
Thank you very much. So this is something we came before the board earlier this spring, talked about the Rothfuss Park Fields and the desire of the board to move ahead on those. So we did, Mike O'Connor put together a bid package for that, as well as the design, the layout of the fields, worked with the Parks Department, Eric and his crew to make sure they were happy with that. The Recreation Department, they were satisfied with the layout as well. So put together a resolution, obviously through this board, to go out to bid. We did go out to bid. We sent it to 5 different companies out there, put it on our website, as typical, put it on Dodge Reports, the standard industry places. Unfortunately, this year, with all of what's going on, it's a very busy market out there. So we had several said, thanks, we appreciate the invite. We're just, kind of buried with other work right now, which is great for them. But we did have one bidder. So we did have Monroe Roadways. We do know them and have worked with them before. So they typically like to have 2 or 3 bidders if possible. But in this one, only had the one bidder that came back. They submitted their bid. They're satisfied with what, they submitted. Had asked whether we're looking to move ahead or not. So obviously that's why we're here tonight, to see what the board's thoughts, whether you're happy with the bid that came in, whether we want to move forward with that, or do we want to wait, see what the market does and rebid later on. The only caveat to that is, we're already looking at a kind of a 2-year cycle. If we build it this summer, you got to grow grass, then you leave it alone next summer, so we're looking at 2023 before you play on it. So if we delay and either bid it out in the fall or wintertime, early spring, now we're into a 2022 construction season, so now you're playing on the fields in 2024. So those are kind of our 2 options, is move ahead with our current bidder that we have right now, or whether the board wants to wait and see if there's other options out there. But most likely we would lose this year of construction. I don't see much changing with the applicants. They didn't say, let's wait a little bit. They pretty much just said, we're full up for this year. So I think it would be a, bid it in the fall and then get in the market for a spring construction next year.
So certainly, 2020 had a lot of impact across a lot of areas, including the construction industry. I mean, some people that were home during that time tackled a number of projects with pools. I think I spoke with someone here recently that they purchased a pool last year, and I think it's slated to go in October of this year. So a lot of what I'll call remodeling and smaller projects got done, or at least in the works. And so now with all of the activity of things opening back up, we're starting to see, more activity with other things, including things like this. So, it's, I think going in, we had thought or estimated that it would be less than this. Maybe, cost estimates might say $100,000+ less than the bids coming in. So the question on the table is, do we want or need them? I think the need is there, but can we afford the need today versus maybe the need 6 months from now or a year from now? So, thoughts or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, one comment. I completely agree with your assessment. If this is over what we thought, over an engineer's estimate per se, then I think we need to, seriously consider holding off and potentially rebidding it out under different conditions or in a different marketplace. If we were saying that this bid came in under what the engineer's estimate was or below what we believed it would be, I might have a different perspective on it, because, then it's a solid bid regardless if we had 1 bidders or if we had 10 bidders. But if it's over what we thought it was going to be, then I would offer that we hold off on this expenditure and maybe wait, another 5 or 6 months and put it out, or wait until next year and put it out and see if we have a different marketplace with more hungry bidders to sharpen their pencil a little bit.
I totally agree.
So one of the things, just to help clarify, certainly hearing the overall number at the bid opening was a little higher than we were anticipating. However, when we actually look at the breakdown and what we estimated for the actual earthwork itself, and what they came in with for a number of what they expected that to be based on the plans that we sent over, and my understanding that they may have gone out and taken some field elevations and actually done a little bit of GPS work themselves to determine and verify what heights are there and would need to be put in place to grade this appropriately. That did increase the total quantity of their earthwork, but yet the dollar amount per cubic yard for that earthwork is a very reasonable number.
So an interesting point, and I guess back to both you and Mr. Valentine, I see that the excavation grading with the compaction component and with the strip stock pile of topsoil, both of those there, I see that they had, we may have had an estimate there, and then they revised that estimate.
Correct.
As I take a look at it. So, for example, excavation grading with compaction, we showed plus or minus 10,000 cubic yards. They, and I'm assuming their penciled-in version was about 2x that.
Correct.
20,450. And then stripping and stockpiling of topsoil, again, we showed approximately 10,000 cubic yards, and in their case, in analysis of that, they reduced that to 7,500 cubic yards. I think those were the two major items that I saw.
There was
on
there were changes. The two numbers that kind of jumped out at me was the sifting and processing of the topsoil, the cost of that, and then the seeding of the fields seemed to be a high number. So maybe it's worth a conversation back, as I know Eric had shared that seed is very high in price right now, whether that impacted that cost. But if we decide to delay, I'd still like to have a conversation with them of kind of what drove some of the numbers. Obviously, we can always sharpen our pencil on our end if we need to refine some stuff and make sure, everybody's bidding on the same thing. But that number for the hydro seed of the field just seemed quite high to me, and I don't know if they're looking at something different than what we're looking at or what we're estimating. If, yeah, they're athletic fields, so hydroseeding the field makes sense, whether we can do, a rotary spreader of seed for the outside areas not on the athletic fields, that could reduce some costs. I think there's maybe some areas we could look at to trim some of the cost if we did go out to rebid, how do we minimize some of that and, lower some of that. So I'd like to reach out to them just to have a conversation and, obviously they're not going to give out their trade secrets of what, but just,
Right.
was there something in there that spooked you? Was there something, what kind of drove those numbers up a little higher than what we thought on some of those items?
May I ask a question, Mr. Supervisor? So, Mr. Valentine, do you think that if we took this out, 6 months from now and asked for bids again, we'd get something different? Because I really have a hard time as representing the town, the residents of Penfield, not to get a second opinion, it's like,
That's the one part that is, we don't know.
Get that.
As, lumber costs are
I know.
quite high right now. Are they going to come back down? We don't know. Without having a second or third bid, that's the only part that gives me pause, is just, if they know there's not other bidders, do you have to be as tight with your bid as if you know there's others?
Right.
Are they busy with jobs and they're just, hey, if you want them this bad, we'll give it to you. If there was 3 bids and they were all in this price range, this is what the price is, and this
Right.
is what construction costs are these days. Construction, as we know it, lumber materials are higher, other stuff is higher, seed is higher, we're seeing pipe prices are higher. So some of that, I think, is reflected in here. It's higher than what we typically would see in past years. I think COVID has pushed that, and there's shortages across the industry in a lot of items, but
Right.
I just have a little concern just with one bid to say, is this the best price for the town? And, are we getting what's best? But knowing if we wait and bid it in the fall, it's not a this year construction. It's a
Right.
2022 construction. Could we hit it in the fall and then somebody can plan for it in their projects and they can start April 1 instead of starting July 1, 2022. But I know there is the demand out there. I know we're not for, excessive athletic fields, so, very sensitive to that as well. It's, definitely we're in need of it. The board, wanted us to move ahead with it.
Yeah.
Just have a little concern of having only one bidder. Are we
Well,
getting the right?
I would move that we not accept the one bid, that we relook at this in 6 months and send it out again for proposals and see if we get another bid. And
Okay.
see what the economy's like, and it's.
So in the meantime, we'll have a conversation, with them, and if we need to revise some of our quantities, talk to them about, what some of the seeding costs are and everything else, and maybe there's something we can help clarify that, it'll sharpen their pencil, and then hopefully, again, we'll get other
Sounds
bidders
good.
at the same time that, maybe we come back with 3 bids and they're exactly the same. Well, that's the cost of construction today, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, there's choice.
I'll second that, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. Moved by Councilperson Cole, seconded by Councilperson Moore. I'll ask, is there any further discussion or comments by the board?
The only question I have, and Eric and Mark, I can't remember if one of you answered it before or not. Is this coming out of one of your budgets? Which budget was this coming out of?
This would be coming out of the rec trust fund.
Got it,
As
okay.
part of a recreation improvement.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion at this time, I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, thank you. Input, feedback, Mark and Eric on that. We'll move on to item C. This is a new sidewalk construction. I'll give Mark an opportunity to tee this up, but I think it would be appropriate if I added just a couple of introductory comments on this. So each year, the town board has looked to go through and do a large sidewalk project, either from infill or to extend sidewalks that we have. I know that we've had a couple of, the one that we had at the top of our list. Mark will speak a little bit too as to where we are and what's gone on with that. However, I think the interest that I think we should have is looking for ways to continue to connect sidewalks, make it in those areas that are the most highly used for our residents. We've worked very hard around schools, worked really hard around business areas for folks to move around. And now, as different areas expand, whether that be some parks, open space, and things like that, we continue to look for ways to improve and to make safe overall. So looking to move forward with some project this year, I think seems to make some sense. And then Mark can take it from there to talk a little bit about where we are with the project originally we discussed and maybe next steps as to where we might want to go. Mark.
Thank you. So obviously, we talked initially, I think in the April timeframe, we had a petition from Ross Brook. We were looking to move ahead with that. We'd gone out and done some survey. We then got some concern from some other residents on the street. They got a petition to put it on the other side of the road, as well as Alta Vista. So we had some residents saying the south, some residents saying the north. Came back to this board and we said, let the neighbors sort it out, come back with a unanimous decision, in that area. So I've had some conversations, have not seen anything come back unanimous in that area. Have had conversations we've talked about in the past about Jackson Road or Old Jackson Road. Have not seen a petition, have not seen anything come from those residents with any consensus on that. I know they've talked about it, but again, we kind of gave them the direction. You guys pick the side, tell us where you want it, come up with consensus. Have not seen anything on that street.
Yeah, there wasn't any part of that conversation for that development that went in, is going in?
They contributed money to it because we didn't know which side of the road it went. So they are going to pay money into the overall sidewalk fund. So as part of their sidewalk waiver, they got a waiver from this board. The board said, hey, we'd rather put the money into doing it along Jackson Road. But we're still waiting to hear back from the residents, which side of the road on Jackson do they want it? Who's going to, we're going to need easements, so is everybody willing to grant easements? Haven't heard back from them as of yet. So the money that, once the homes start being built, that'll go into a fund. We'll keep that in reserve for it, whenever they come back with.
You don't think that should be like up there in the top group?
I've got it on it's on the list, so I've just put it under the public requests list, so it's in there. It's on the list, haven't, forgotten about it, but just until we get something with a more consensus.
Right, and I think
Direction
I agree
neighborhood.
with what you're saying 100%, but I also believe that the town should not be in a position where we're just coming in and saying, we're going to put a sidewalk
Right.
here, and this is where it's going to go, and this is when we're going to do it. There's got to be a level of transparency with the residents that live on that particular street, and more importantly, in my opinion, it's got to be initiated to some extent by the residents that live on that street. And I think on Jackson Road, to date, they've talked about it a lot, but there's not really been that level of initiation to go around and say, okay, we've talked to the neighbors, the residents have talked to themselves and said, we want it on this side of the street, and everybody seems to be okay with that, so that you get a more of a consensus approval before the town spends the time, energy, money, labor to move
I
down that
understand
road.
Well,
So
maybe somebody on Jackson Road will hear us tonight and say,
And I've
hey,
talked to the
I'll
neighbors,
take
and
the lead.
Yeah.
we've had neighborhood meetings when we walked, when
Right.
Stafford Park Development obviously created a big stir on Jackson Road.
Yeah.
Neighbors came out and they asked, how do we get it? So I put it back to them and said, work the neighborhood, go around and get a
they haven't
petition.
done
And
so yet.
and that was a year ago, so I have not heard
Yeah,
or seen
and I
anything come
think-
back.
And Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in some areas of the town that were more commercial, we've gone and said, clearly we need a sidewalk on Empire Boulevard because it's just dangerous for people to be walking on the road, and it's not really impacting residential neighborhoods per se. So we've made that public safety decision
Right.
to put those sidewalks there, whereas in other residential neighborhoods, I think having the residents kind of lead the charge and getting that consensus is an important element of our decision-making process.
I think Huntington Meadows is a great
Right,
example.
yes.
They came out with
Perfect.
consensus, and a lot of times, depending on the right-of-way that's there, we need easement. So
Right.
if a resident is unable, unwilling to give us an easement,
No, I remember Baird Road.
we've got caps.
Remember?
We had
That's
Baird
a
Road
great
that came
example.
out, and similar to Ross
Yeah.
Brook, they came out and said, we want them, and then half the neighbors came out and said, we don't want them,
Right.
so it went away.
Okay.
Recently, we've had requests for Atlantic Avenue, a resident in Treebrook. On the north side, we looked at this a number of years ago, north side up to Scribner Road. Wanted sidewalks in that area. Again, I shared back with that resident saying, go talk to those neighbors. If you can, one, get consensus, they're supportive of it, and two, willing to, grant an easement, I'll bring that back to the board and have the conversations. They're off working on that. We've got, a couple other spots that, we've looked at, or people have had requests on, just don't have that consensus from the neighborhood on it. So in speaking with the supervisor, we've had Route 250, as Councilman Moore had shared, connection to the YMCA. That's been on our radar for a while. We've got more mixed use going in, so connecting past Hidden Hollow. We've talked to them. They're supportive of it, so looking to move ahead on that. We've had a request from Parkview for a small portion of Parkview, kind of on the curve, and I think that could be a danger location.
It
I've
is.
not spoken to the two residents whose property it is. Need to speak to them. I've heard from other people on the street that are supportive of it, but again, if we need easements, need to talk to those two neighbors. Another spot we've talked about and looked at is on Penfield Road. Now that Ellison Heights has put their sidewalk and put it in, we recently met with Dolomite, went back to them. Way back in their deed, it said if and when sidewalks connect to Dolomite's property, Dolomite has to put sidewalks in along Penfield Road. So they are currently working with an engineering firm to look at design of putting it in, even though they're moving out of that property. They're moving their corporate headquarters off of that and into Parker Hill Drive and the new Panorama Park area. In part of their deed, it still said they had to put sidewalks in. So we're looking at, well, if they connect their piece, there's a short 200-foot-ish piece in front of Gentles Market would be the last connection going from that neighborhood to the west on Penfield Road. So looked at including that piece. And then most recently in conversations with the supervisor was, is there a need or potential right here on the town hall property? As I come in and out of Columbus Crossing morning and night, going in and out, there is always somebody walking up and down in the road, whether dogs, whether kids, whether families, coming in to access the park. So one of the things I had Mike laid out was kind of, I can share through the share screen. I'll put that up for. Is looking at Columbus Crossing, does it make sense to put a sidewalk in on our property? I know we've got trails, but whether it's the residents coming from the south, but you always see people walking up Columbus Crossing, with dogs, with kids. You've got the ball fields here accessing the property, is putting it along the south side, following that up, and then connecting over to our trail, our trail on the west side, or accessing the town hall parking lot that people walk in and around. That would be our property. Obviously, we don't need any easements or anything from anybody else.
No, that's a good idea.
We could, just, access that and work off of, that. And I don't know if my share screen is messing up with PCTV, but I'll stop sharing the screen if that helps with them. Putting it in along there may make a lot of sense, especially with that, that ball field and, in that area. So the spots that I kind of just floated to the top was, continuing along 250 with the YMCA, which we've been talking about, supporting doing Penfield Road in conjunction with the Dolomite property. So if and when they do their piece, whether it's midsummer or late summer, time it. So we work with them on that piece. Investigate further the Parkview neighborhood and the safety over there. And then look to, possibly do the town hall property to, put a sidewalk in to get people off of Columbus Crossing, get them out of the road and, provide a safe location
they're all
for them
good.
there. So, we have, so all that being told that, there is no grant money for any of this. Unfortunately, none of it falls under the CDBG. We did submit under the CDBG grant this year for a culvert replacement. So in the Courtshire neighborhood, we submitted over there. We have a tentative number, I think, of $90,000 that they're looking to provide for us on that one. So that's a great, help to take care of that project and to, offset the cost, so it doesn't have to be sidewalks. We've kind of focused on sidewalks for the community development block grants, but it can be any infrastructure in those designated areas. Those are the ones I just kind of float out. I, still left Rossbrook on there if that comes back. We've had some requests for a 5-mile line in different areas. Again, those are kind of, say, one-offs. We have 1 or 2 individuals ask for it, not the street or the area. Jackson Road is obviously on there. See, when, if they come back on that. Atlantic Avenue, I, put that out to back to the one resident to follow up. And then I had Coral and Thoroughbred, or Corral and Thoroughbred, excuse me. That one, it's not a mainline road, so I shared with them that typically this board does either cut-through streets or mainline roads. We don't look at doing sidewalks within neighborhoods. If that neighborhood wanted to come together as a whole, and within that neighborhood they wanted to do sidewalks, we could help facilitate the conversation, we could facilitate the design, but we would look to bond that out over, a 30-year period or some time. I know we'd done that, years ago in the Fox Hill neighborhood. A resident came out and said, we want sidewalks in our neighborhood. And we said, we'll facilitate the conversation, we'll help you along, but the town isn't going to pay for sidewalks for a neighborhood. The town pays for sidewalks along mainline roads, cut-through streets that, are safety issues, not just, within a neighborhood location. So that's kind of the list of what I had. But knowing we're pushing June 1 here come next week, for us to get survey, get our designs, get going, see where we are even with construction and contractors. We're kind of getting late in the season already to make sure we can get something in the ground this year. So just wanted to come back to the board. Don't have to make a decision tonight if you want some time or soak time or thought time on it. I know, Debbie, we're talking in some neighbors in your neighborhood off of Liberty Street and Highland. Again, there's some neighbors that
And
I
I know
think,
how hard it is to get everybody to agree.
I think the neighbors,
Highland
I think the neighbors
Yeah.
surrounding that have interest. It's,
Right.
we looked at it years ago, that there's going to be some substantial impacts to those neighbors right on Highland.
Right.
So-
There's a lot of grade in there, there's trees in there that we'd have to take out, so,
Yeah, we had that conversation before.
we need
Because to
easements
me, that's
and we need
similar
grading
to
releases. and-
the Park View one, because it's one of those things that people come cruising around there and people are walking, they have nowhere to go.
And I think
And it's almost like a blind.
Well, the connectivity too to
Yeah.
all the schools
Yeah.
and the village, I mean, that piece. But like you say, if everyone doesn't agree that wants it on the front,
I know,
obviously the
yeah.
town is not going to go forward, and if all the neighbors can't agree, and that's pretty much, I guess my question to you, Mark, is most all the projects that you'd want to do you've got agreement that.
And that's what we kind of focused on
That's
is, obviously the YMCA Loan 250, we'd have to get state permits and complete that part of it. We've had talked to those resident businesses in the past, they were supportive of it. Obviously, the YMCA is supportive of it. I think, our residents would like to walk, bike to the YMCA. We've got the pet indicators there now with the new mixed-use development going on across the street. We may kind of wait a little bit and see the timing they're in before the planning board come June on the east side of the street, so they've got to do some sidewalks. We'll look to, tie in with their project. Obviously, the sidewalk on town property, that's your jurisdiction, so if you want to move ahead, we can move ahead on that, but that's kind of where we refocused, and that's how we've shared back with residents. If they want sidewalks in their street or this, kind of put it back to them and say, okay, do some homework. It's, as you had shared on Huntington Meadows, the 2 girls on Huntington Meadows did a great job. They went door to door. They came and presented a petition. They, it is a cut-through street, so it's not we're not putting sidewalks in a neighborhood, but they did that. They did the legwork for it all, and then we picked it up from there, did the survey, did the design, did the construction. I know you've called me and shared pictures
I'm
of
in there- I'm
of
there all the
accessing it.
time.
I think it's worked
Great
out
job.
well.
Great.
For it being
I
out
like
there.
this, except I want to keep open the Jackson Road, which in my mind, that is a cut-through. I know people cut through.
And that's why
I don't.
And that's why we've
But I
entertained it. We haven't said this
yeah.
is a neighborhood
It's
issue.
narrow.
That's why the board has
It's narrow.
entertained it. And I think this board also committed those funds from Stafford Park to go to that sidewalk
Right.
in the future. So we'll have to make sure that, you know,
One side or the other, depending
the
upon.
comptroller puts those in a
Exactly.
dedicated fund, but we'll have some money as a, you know, a starter fund, you know, whenever, you know, that it's decided, you know, those funds from that sidewalk waiver.
Exactly.
He may not be installing them along his frontage, but we took easements for him, so that's not an issue in the future. You know, also then the funds from that project, you know, would go towards, you know, sidewalks in that area, you know.
And I really like the idea out here at Columbus
Company.
Circle, because I haven't driven down there of late because of, you know, pandemic times and stuff, but when I would drive down there and there was things going on, there were moms, and their kids, and everybody was like, you know, it was a little, you had to really go, drive very slow and very gingerly because people were all over the place. To give them a sidewalk, at least there's a place to go to. They had
And I think
nowhere to
having
move over to.
a dedicated spot for them
Yeah.
to walk, and it's great,
like it.
this property is so popular, and people
Yeah.
walk it every day, the morning, evening, lunchtime.
Yeah, safety.
There's always somebody walking on it, but I think give them a dedicated spot to walk, I think would be a
Mark, I
benefit.
actually noticed that tonight driving in, that quite a bit of pedestrian traffic coming from the parking lot on the south side, crossing over to the fields. I don't know if a crosswalk designation would make sense in maybe one or two spots along that
We
stretch.
can look at that
but-
in the middle, and then, again, being on our property, we
Good
can
idea.
either put a little, sometimes they have the sign in the middle of the road
Yeah.
as a crossing, but, you know, you gotta be very careful
Yeah.
driving out.
You do.
Mom and dad pull in, pop the trunk, and I've seen kids jump out and just beeline it, you know,
Yeah.
for the field, or whether they're late for practice or something else, they're just start, you know, running for
Yeah.
it. So I think anything we can do to improve, you know, some safety before there is an issue there, we think would be a benefit.
Okay, Board, do you want to think about it? Do you want to
You want a
direct the
motion?
team to move forward
Yeah.
with it?
Yeah, I make a motion that we move forward with the recommendations that were put forward this evening by Mark.
I'll second that.
Can move by Councilperson Cole, second by Councilperson Ockenden. This would be looking to move some funds along Columbus Crossing from Jackson Road up to Easterly, up to the top of the hill, and then making that connection to existing walkways that we have to the north. All right, seeing no further discussion, roll call vote of approval, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, thank you, Board. We'll next move on to tree removal. This is Baird Road and Legacy Circle, and Mr. Tate is our tree man. And so with that, Mr. Tate, anybody I know that's standing out there on the road there?
That would be Gordon with our highway foreman,
Got it, all right.
one of the two. This concern actually came in from one of the residents on Legacy Circle. If you're familiar with the road, it's a pretty long kind of straightaway before the bend and the houses actually start. They're currently developing and building 2 houses to the north. But, you know, right now, one's under construction and there's still an empty lot between that house and Legacy Circle itself. The resident that called about this, you know, does live at the back of the cul-de-sac, but, you know, just as they are driving by it every day, certainly concerned about the condition as they've seen it deteriorate, you know, over the past few years. Unfortunately, with a lot of the other trees, this is also an ash tree that has died. It's the one that stands straight up, but there's a
Right.
branch that's leaning out at the angle as well, you know, toward the roadway. It is within the town's right of way. There is no adjacent neighbor next door. Otherwise, you know, as we've kind of talked about, making sure the neighbors are aware, there really is no adjacent neighbor to talk to. Just wanted to, you know, kind of touch base with you guys and make sure that you're, you know, comfortable with having that tree taken down before it comes down in the road. You know, either on Baird Road or Legacy Circle or, you know, on someone on that sidewalk along Baird.
Eric, standard question. Is it town staff that you'd be looking at or looking to hire that out?
I'm unsure right now. There's no overhead utility wires on that side of Baird or along Legacy Circle. there is enough room that we could safely put it on the ground, but I want to assess it and make sure that we're fully comfortable with what we're doing. Likely, we would end up, if we were to do that, we would end up actually stopping, have flaggers stop traffic and likely drop that into Baird Road, most likely kind of at an angle in the intersection, and then, cut that up and clean it up from there, at least to get, so we could do one-way traffic around it while we continue to clean the rest of the tree up.
Gotcha. Doesn't look like you'd have to do any wide clearing to get to the tree. It looks like you'd be just dropping it.
Be one cut at the bottom and that's it.
Thanks.
And you'd leave the stump.
We would leave the stump. It is in kind of a wooded, brushy area behind, there's a little bit of landscaping, really just mulch and a few rocks at that corner right now. There's no, sign, welcoming you into the neighborhood or any thing decorative there that we have to worry about. So it would blend in with the rocks and the mulch kind of right behind.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Board,
Yeah.
good to go?
Yep. Yep,
Motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Moved by Councilperson Akinen, second by Councilperson Draw. Seeing no further discussion, those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item E. This is Pennicott Drive cul-de-sac petition. Mr. Tate's name is by it only because he is the cul-de-sac guy and he's the tree guy and what have you. But if the board recalls, the town clerk entered into the record at our May 5th legislative session a petition that came in from the residents on at this location at Pennicott Circle. And there were basically three asks of the town board. Ask number one was, we the undersigned are concerned citizens who request the removal of the tree stump that was left in the cul-de-sac. Two, a guarantee from the town that the grassy cul-de-sac area will be left in place. And that three, the residents, I should have had this information, I apologize. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I believe. 10 different residents in that general area. And that that they'd be allowed to have a mature tree planted where the old tree was located. They go on to say, we will purchase the new tree and have it planted. Additionally, we promise that the tree in the grassy area will be maintained by Pennicott Drive residents year-round. So that was what came into the board on the 5th of May. And again, it got tagged to Mr. Tate because I believe at some point the town went in and removed the tree that's there, and I see that the tree that we see was obviously, oh, thank you, Mark. I believe I had heard, so I just need to verify, I believe I had heard that a resident had called in to ask that the tree be removed. I believe that's what I heard, and I just looking to verify or re-verify that.
Correct. Yep. We were contacted by a resident on the circle. It's my understanding that it was the father of the resident that actually planted the tree originally. The tree, as with a lot of the others, was an ash tree that had died. I know the petition indicated that they were unaware of why the tree was removed. Yeah, if you can, the one other picture, Mark, the tree, and the original picture kind of showed or the first picture showed the tree. What was there, as you see, it does split pretty low to the ground and more or less does have two trunks. As that tree was being cut, or as soon as they started cutting it, both sides actually did split and snap and more or less fall in opposite directions and peel like a banana. That other picture that Mark's got can pull up, right looking directly over the stump, shows the crack that was in that tree and how
Sure.
it had rotted, and been rotting, long before we ever showed up. The tree was taken down. I know we've gotten a number of phone calls from residents, asking about the tree, what's going to be done, what's going to be, put back. If they can put, if we're going to grind the stump, if we're going to pull it, if they can have that done per the updated design criteria that this board just approved, I believe last fall, or last kind of late summer, early fall. Our design criteria indicates that landscaped islands within cul-de-sacs and circles are no longer to be allowed. They cause issues for any utilities and underground utilities that we have, particularly, at least from the town standpoint, both our storm and sanitary sewer. They also, do grow, and as we're trying to plow circles and, make it around, we're hitting branches and or it just more difficult for the actual snow storage within them. We have been, we don't mow any of the ones that are existing. We do leave it up to and allow the residents that live closest to that, if they want to mow and maintain that, they're more than welcome to. If and when residents are no longer taking care of those circle areas, we have been digging out the grass and paving them back over, so it is one solid asphalt surface.
Right.
I've explained that that's, per the design criteria and what's, been put in place in our policy. That's what I can say about this. My hands are tied and I can't do anything different. If they, wish to have something different, then they can certainly submit a petition to you guys. However, I certainly have some concerns over, replacing the tree.
Right, so it's a grassy area. They've been cutting the grass?
Yep.
So they can take
They
out
have,
the stump, they can
and-
take the stump out, they can, right? It's all part of it.
I'm sorry, say that again?
They can take the stump out, the people
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I have no problem if they want to cover the cost of having the stump ground and have it,
Yeah.
to have the entire circle, just lawn area, and they want to continue to mow that, they're more than welcome from my
Well,
standpoint.
if they wanted to put up another tree, is there, could they go to you to talk
Per-
about what
per-
kind of tree
per our
would be
des- Per our
better?
design criteria, no tree whatsoever.
Even though it's already
Well,
existing?
hold on, let's make sure
Sorry.
we look at the book fully open instead of partially closed. And I'll preface this comment as the guy, when I came in as supervisor, I sent letters out to pave over the cul-de-sacs because of issues with snow plowing and damage, and every time a truck other than our trucks, garbage trucks, moving trucks went through, we were getting called to repave that or to re-landscape it, sod or topsoil seed and things like that. So I was the guy that was pushing to minimize that and then pushing to change our design criteria, especially in a case that you have new builds. So this is an existing one. We do have a handful of existing ones that are still have grass and have some landscaping in it. So one might argue that this is pre-existing non-conforming before
what
the
I was,
design
yeah.
criteria. Having said that, trees that go in, they grow, and then with salt and snow and things like that, they get damaged. I think that while I think it's easier and more efficient for us on some of these pre-existing cases, I think we have to explain to the residents that a tree came down. We're not going to replant it if you elect to plant it because it was a pre-existing cul-de-sac. You certainly can do that, but we're not responsible for it. If salt or anything like that occurs, it's solely up to them. And it's solely up to them to maintain the grass, whether they cut it or they elect to have it converted more to an asphalt type of base. That certainly is something that they can have a say in. But in this particular case, I think we should at least take into account, again, moving forward, something new. It's solid paved, no landscaping, but this is one of those ones that one might consider pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah,
I would agree with Supervisor LaFountain's comment on that. I mean, that's the first thing I think of when I see that, and we've got a petition of the neighbors who seem to want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
And I would be in favor of letting them plant a tree if that's what they so choose, with the understanding that there's no guarantees it's going to survive, and we're not going to do anything to, continue to try to keep a tree there.
Yeah.
Mr. Supervisor, and Mr. Tate, just wanted to share something with you on this. So I'm a resident of Penfield. I've lived in 2 different cul-de-sacs. I raised, for 15 years, I was living in the Leonard Crescent cul-de-sac, which I know, Mr. Tate, you were very kind and gracious with the neighbors there. What happened when we were all young and we all had kids, we used to all share mowing that circle, which was part of the great. Everybody enjoyed doing that. They shoveled around and so forth. The tree, since then, people move away. The kids move. Nobody wants to mow anymore. Hence, one of the reasons that residents that came to the town and said, hey, nobody wants to take care. There's a dead tree in that circle. Nobody wants to be mowing the circle anymore. What are we going to do? You worked with them. They did it is beautiful now. It's paved. There's no tree in it. I also am in a new subdivision, or not new, but in the Cobblestone Crossing subdivision, which always has a circle, which now has 17 children on that street. They play on when the snow is in the circle, they play on the piles. They do little parades around there during COVID. The kids have really embraced that circle. It's so I guess I can see both sides, but my question or my point is, and I respect the residents here that say they like to plant a tree and they're going to mow it, but people leave eventually these areas. People come in and don't want any part of taking care of that area. I don't know that you can say we're going to mow that area forever. Those 6 houses. I don't know, unless you have some kind of an agreement, because this is what happened. And then you put neighbors against, and they come back to the town. And then the divots, the same thing, you're referring to. It gets all rotted up from the trucks and coming through, and then they want somebody to come and fix the divots. I think this is I know it's a serious, people would love to have the trees. But as far as the responsibility of the town to get calls on that, as far as what's going to happen in the future, I just think we really have to take a look at that. I'm all for trees, that. I don't want to take any of them down. I love, I understand that the trees that are dying, but I just think it is a responsibility to residents and the new ones, people coming in, that I'm not sure that I want to buy a house, if somebody wants to come into town, buy a house, knowing that they have to mow, they're part of they're going to have to take care of that circle. So that's my perspective on it. So
That's a good one, and it just adds to what I think Tony wants to do in the long run. But, as this is an existing island, we can't say we're just going to go in there and plow over it or something, but we can explain the situation that this may not be there forever. Just understand that people leave, like you're saying. There's a story to be told that, it's all about communication, get the word out, I think.
And I've had a conversation with a number of the neighbors and explained that, or at least, currently, I have no intention of paving over that. I don't, it's not a project on the list to happen this summer.
No.
That's kind of the if come, that they choose not to maintain it, that, that's certainly an option. As far as paving the circle, would I like it to be paved? Sure. But I'm not gonna, just come in and say, yep, we're ripping it out and it's happening whether you want it or
Part
not.
of part of our process was to give residents an option.
Yes.
And some residents said, please come in and pave. Others said, no. And, I saw it in our neighborhood, a few doors down from our home where a number of residents wanted it. There was the flagpole there, as you're well aware. As residents passed away, it came to a point that residents said, now's the time to do it, and it was done some number of years ago now. But I might suggest that, there are the number of households, I said 10 or 11. I should have made that note on here, but what I would say is certainly they can, continue to keep that as a grassed area and mow it. If they want to plant a tree, fine. I guess the big question is that do they take the stump out, or does the town potentially take the stump out?
Would there be any insurance requirement if they were to have somebody come in and do it on our property that we'd have to?
Well, it is technically the town's property. I mean, at the very least, they would have to get a dig safe. They'd have to go and apply for the dig safe if
And I
somebody
would
were to come in.
likely, have them coordinate that with us and apply for a right-of-way permit. I mean, there's no cost or fee, but that way I can make sure that I have the information for, being that it is work within the right-of-way, that I have, the contractor's information and can ensure that I've got a copy of any insurance certificate on file.
Okay, so where are we, board?
I'll make a motion that we allow, the owners in that area to remove the stump and plant a tree at the expense of the neighbors involved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Draw,
No.
Cole,
Aye.
LaFountain,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, thank you, board. We'll move on to item F, and this is for RG&E night work paving. And Mr. Tate.
Thank you, and I believe we also have 2 guests on with us.
All right.
Appreciate their patience.
Gentlemen, thank you for your patience.
No problem, guys. Thank you.
Who do we have, Jarrett?
John and.
Yep.
Jarrett, welcome. And I
doing?
see 2 pictures of Jarrett, so it's
Jarrett's
Jarrett and his
driving.
brother Jarrett.
All right, hold on. What do I got to do here?
So as he gets that going, I'll just explain.
Oh, we got John Mason coming as well.
So over the, I guess, starting last fall.
Hello?
And, through the winter a little bit.
Hold on, Eric. Hold on. Don't get ahead of your blockers. So we have Jarrett and John?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Thank you. All right, now I'll wind Mr. Tate up. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. So, originally starting last late summer into the fall, RG&E was doing a gas main replacement project along Wayland Road, more or less from 5 Mile to Baird. It did extend a little bit past each intersection, but now that project has wrapped up, they do have there's some final restoration and permanent asphalt restoration that needs to be completed along Wayland Road. It is a county road. DDS is the one that did the project for RG&E and has contacted me regarding the possibility of doing the asphalt restoration, especially since some of it involves the intersection of 5 Mile and Wayland, as well as the intersection at Wayland and Baird. The possibility of doing that work at night, similar to some of the other bigger paving projects that have happened in the past. They are looking at this work, kind of scheduling it out for the 3rd to 4th week of June. So it's certainly not something that they're hoping to start, tomorrow night or tonight if the board, was in favor. But it is something that would be scheduled out, and advance notice could be given, to all of the neighbors kind of impacted along that stretch of road. Their work hours that they're looking would be somewhere in the range of 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. And it would take, right, my understanding was 3 to 4 days, possibly 5 at the most. There wasn't, part of the original request was also to close that stretch of Wayland down to local traffic and emergency vehicles only. Being that Wayland Road is a county road, that is something that they would need to coordinate and get approval from the Monroe County DOT for. But, I think that time frame of evening, I think would be a lot more conducive if they needed to do such as well. With that said, I'd like, Jarrett, he's with Upstate Asphalt, that'll actually be doing the work on behalf of DDS, as well as John, who's with DDS directly, to kind of speak on behalf of, what the intent and plan would be.
All right, gentlemen, you're up. You got the floor.
Perfect, guys. Thank you. So what we're proposing here is obviously we want to hopefully do this work at night if we get the approval for it. Just being with the high volume of traffic that goes through that intersection of 5 Mile Line and Wayland Road there, also Baird Road. I think it would make the whole process move much more faster, much more efficiently, to be able to come in and at least knock this out during the overnight hours. Obviously, like Mr. Tate said, we would maintain traffic flow for local residents as well as emergency vehicles. But for the most part, we would like to shut down that road if we could get permission from the county, just to make the process go faster. If not, we'll have to perform it during the day, and deal with traffic control. It's just going to push the project out to be a much more time-consuming process, as then we'll be dealing with all the traffic and flow of vehicles throughout that intersection, as well as Baird Road, where we all know is pretty hectic during the day.
Okay.
Just,
All right.
Yeah.
Just for the
It
board's.
also makes for a much safer work environment as well.
Sure.
Yep,
Well-
absolutely.
I
Okay,
just-
board, questions, comments?
Where are you with the county? I mean, that sounds like that's the big ask, right? County road?
That is definitely the big ask. We wanted to approach you guys first to see if there would be any kickback to overnight. If you guys are okay with the overnight, option of this, we still got a lot of logistics to lay out on this project. This is simply just trying to figure out our starting point here to see if this option is on the table.
Got
If this option is on the table with you guys, then yes, we're going to take it to the county and approach them about shutting down that road and see what kind of feedback we get from them.
Okay.
So I can say DDS has contacted the Monroe County DOT about the possibility of the night work. DOT was supportive of such, but wanted to leave it up to the Penfield Town Board to give kind of the final permission, knowing that it's outside of our typical accepted work hours.
Yep, understand. All right, board, any thoughts, any comments?
What, just a quick question to the guests. When you talk about doing night work, I forget who it was that said 3 days, maybe 5 days if you have a rainy night or something like that. If we said no and you had to go back to doing it during the day with traffic, what is the duration of that? What's the difference between night and day duration of the project?
I think it's safe to say that it would double.
Okay.
And then I think, was it Jarrett? I think that's the big piece that I'm always sensitive to is the safety aspect, the safety for the workers in that area, making sure that we try to minimize exposure as best we can, recognizing we can't eliminate it all, but the safety factor is a big factor.
Yes, I agree.
And then my final question would be, obviously, what kind of noise
that's what I was gonna ask.
would be heard with work at night?
We're gonna have a combination of noise going on out there. During the first process of this would be milling. You're gonna have a 4-foot mill out there. We're gonna have bobcats out there. So you're gonna hear backup alarms. You're gonna hear dump trucks with backup alarms, that sort of thing. And then the actual mill itself grinding the asphalt down. That's not the loudest part. I think the loudest part is gonna be just backup alarms of equipment and whatnot. For the milling process, and then the paving process, pretty much the same thing, just a bobcat running, paver running, and then you got the backup alarms of all the trucks going in there.
Okay.
Now, the way they've kind of posed, and as you can see on the map, the smaller sections along the road where you can actually see red are the sections that they're actually going to be working. So it's not the entire stretch from Baird to 5 Mile, both lanes. There's select, segments within that, the biggest spot being probably the intersection of kind of that north half of the intersection of 5 Mile at Wayland, and then a longer stretch along Wayland just west of Baird, but then within that or kind of in between a few smaller spots. So even with the way they're looking to, or at least proposing to break up the work, they'd start with the intersection of 5 Mile in Wayland, mill that out, and then be able to allow CACMEs to actually come in, replace the loops within that intersection, and then jump back down to Baird Road, and then work their way back west again. So even though it's over the course of a few days, the residents in each house may not hear the noise produced from every night of work. It's only going to be when that work is actually occurring in front of their particular house.
Okay.
Okay. Certainly, this board, has worked with various agencies, the county and the state in the past, as it relates to doing road work in the evening. The last big job that we had was 441, as we basically paved from just west of the Four Corners all the way down to 250 and a little past that. And it certainly made for safer work. Yes, you'll have a resident or two that may raise a concern. I know that providing general information out to them helps take that edge off, and knowing that they can get in and out of things a lot easier over a couple-week period if you were to do it during the day, versus a little bit of inconvenience in the evening for 3 to 5 days, depending upon weather, just seems to make a lot of sense.
The 3 to 5 days is definitely on the higher side of the estimate. We're just saying that to be safe.
Yep.
In case we do run into anything. But ideally, my plan would be, one night mill the entire thing out and one night pave the entire thing out. That's the ideal situation, but I am saying 3 to 5 days to allow for any hiccups that, may occur in the situation, because it is night work. And, if a piece of equipment goes down, chances are I won't be able to get it up and running, by morning time as if I would during the day. So
Sure.
That's the window of 3 to 5 days that I'm giving you there. But ideally, like I said, I would like to complete this for all parties included in the course of 2 nights. 1 night for milling, 1 night for paving, and then we would come back, a separate time and just seam seal all the new asphalt that we put down, as well as put the new stripes in. And that won't be much of a disturbance to traffic flow at all. I'm not really worried about that part of it. It's really the paving that I want to make sure we could get squared away in the time restraints that we got.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ward?
I was going to say, what about in the daytime? So you're working at night, what happens in the morning? Is it just the people that live there that can get through?
The sun comes up.
Absolutely. So what would happen is let's say, for example, on Monday night, we mill the entire thing out. We clean up by 6 o'clock in the morning. All our cones are on the side of the road, and then all our equipment's leaving out of there. So it would almost be like we came in that night, and then we're gone in the morning. You're back to full traffic flow by about that 6 a.m. mark.
Okay, the full traffic.
Right there.
Yeah,
Full
the road-
traffic.
The full
The road
traffic.
would be reopened.
Very good.
Yeah, reopening it.
Very good.
Mr. Supervisor, question, as far as the lighting, on those nights that you'll be doing the work, will you have those lights, those big, huge lights, the entire way, the entire stretch of Atlantic Avenue there?
That's
Just where we're
Whalen Road.
working.
Whalen, I'm sorry, Whalen, I mean, I'm sorry?
Wayland.
I'm Whalen. You'll have the lights, the entire,
Breaking up on me.
I'm sorry?
No, not the entire section,
Just
only
for
the
the work.
areas that we're gonna be working. So, you know, when we're down in the intersection of 5 Mile Line in Wayland, we're gonna have that lit up with absolutely nothing going on up at the top at Baird Road and, Wayland.
Wayland.
And then, you know, when we're done at 5 Mile, we're gonna jump all the way down the roadway and we'll move the lights with us as we go.
Great.
We'll have light towers portable, so they're only gonna be on where we're working at the time. Once we're done and tied up, wrapped up in that area that we're working, the lights will move.
Okay.
So, you know, they could be in one section for a couple hours and then they may move, you know, to the next section that we step to.
Thank you.
Okay. Board?
I would move that we go, that we accept it, that we.
Support night work?
Support, yes, that's the word. That we support the night work for this project.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, been moved by Councilperson Cole, second by Councilperson Draw. This would be to allow sometime around the end of the June timeframe to allow time to do night work to facilitate making this project go quicker, less traffic impact, and definitely more safe for the folks doing the work, and that we pass that information on to the County of Monroe so as they go and make their permit paperwork process that the county is aware that the town board is supportive. All right, seeing no further discussion, those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
I will say aye with the understanding to the applicants that there is verified outreach to the neighbors and residents along that stretch, so they're not caught by surprise. So that's an aye.
Okay.
And Ockenden.
Aye, as well as Councilman Moore's comments, as long as it's not the day before. I think, you know, some advance notice would be good.
Yep.
And,
Okay.
and I don't, yeah, I'll work with them to make sure and, you know, certainly understanding that they wanted to plan this for the 3rd or 4th week in June. You know, that was part of our conversation, is to make sure that we had time to do that.
It's 5 ayes.
Okay.
Thank you all for your.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yep, and thank you for your patience. We do appreciate it. It was one of those nights, so thank you for sticking around. Thank you for the input, feedback. Be well and be safe.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you
Have a
very
good
much. All right, there being no, I'm sorry, Sue, are you good?
I'm all set.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. There being no further business to come before the board this evening, the May 26, 2021 work session of the Penfield Town Board will stand adjourned at 8:50 p.m. Thank you to everyone that participated. Thank you to Penfield TV, the team of Ryan and Dave downstairs that made all this happen, and certainly our driver tonight, Mr. Valentine, for his wonderful job of keeping everything on the screen before us. Thank you all. Be well, be safe.